welcome back to this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Rohde. I'm joined alongside my co-host, London Beth, and today we are diving into the Chicago Bears' current roster and what it may look like on opening day. Before we begin, this is completely based off CBS Sports' current roster that they have posted. So the Bears have not posted their official depth chart yet because they have obviously signed a million undrafted rookies. They still have a million guys on the roster that are very questionable. Now, London and I think won't be there for opening day. So this is a very exciting topic because later this week, we will be hitting on our season predictions as the schedule comes out this Wednesday, May 12th. So London, I know that kind of, the elephant in the room is the quarterback position. So kind of take us through where the Bears stand right now and where you think the depth chart's going to go.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. A couple of different things to hit on just when it comes to the quarterback position. Of course, it's going to be the most scrutinized, most looked at position in Chicago. Honestly, I hope for HBO Hard Knocks if they come to Chicago. There's been some whispers about it. I think that'd be really awesome just to see the ins and outs of what that quarterback room is actually going to look like, since Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace said it's going to be a great place to bring a rookie in. Clearly, Andy Dalton, after hearing from Matt Nagy, he's been on a couple talk shows this past week, and he said Andy Dalton got the phone call before the draft if they took a quarterback, and after, once they took Justin Fields. They still told him he's still going to be the starting quarterback. I expect that week one. Tony and I talked about that a little bit in our last episode, and I just agree. I think that give Justin Fields his time, kind of do the Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes thing, where, don't put Justin Fields in until he's ready, until the locker room knows. And just, they're grown men. They'll know when he's ready. He'll know when he's ready. And then I, of course, expect Nick Foles to kind of be everyone's backup this year. I heard a little bit that we were trying to trade him back to the Eagles and some other teams. Nobody wanted him, so he's pretty much just dead cap. But, if we need to put him in there, or if we're winning by a lot, maybe he'll see some time. But overall, like I said, we have good veterans that have been successful in the league, who have won. Bringing Justin Fields into that locker room, I think I compare Andy Dalton a lot to Alex Smith, just in the kind of schemes he uses, the kind of players he's been around, all that kind of stuff. So if Matt Nagy, in this quarterback room can do the same thing that he did do with Patrick Mahomes, since that was his guy, and I give a lot of credit to Patrick Mahomes' second-year success to Matt Nagy with Justin Fields, it could be a good year.
Yeah, 100% agree on that. But just to make things clear, like you were kind of saying, London, Andy Dalton is the starter for opening day for the Chicago Bears, followed by Justin Fields and then Nick Foles. So Nick Foles just went from the guy everyone was saying save the Chicago Bears, comes in, defeats Atlanta, wearing the tinted visor, like this is the guy, to I'm the third string quarterback, the highest paid third string quarterback in the NFL, behind a guy that hasn't even taken a snap yet and a guy that is 1-6. Has a 1-6 touchdown to interception ratio in the playoffs. So the people might say the Bears quarterback room is a mess. Had this conversation today with my good friend, Matt Michaels, and Andy Dalton is not the answer. We've been saying that the entire time, but he's the most experienced, best regular season quarterback proven in the NFL that is on the Chicago Bears roster. And like London was kind of saying, I feel like this is going to be an Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes situation. They signed him to a 1-year contract. They're going to let Fields kind of learn, feel it out, and stay tuned for our predictions coming in, when we think Justin Fields may be going into the starting role, if it happens this season. But I see Andy Dalton being the guy for at least the first half of the season. And if he's playing well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If the Bears are playing well, keep Andy Dalton in there and let Justin Fields kind of learn. So Dalton, Fields, Foles in starting to third string order for the Chicago Bears currently. And this isn't even a shock either, but let's kind of move to the guys that are behind the quarterback, our running backs. David Montgomery is number one running back for the Chicago Bears. There's no doubt about it. He's an absolute beast. He had a breakout year last year, and that was before a revamped offensive line. So now that we kind of have an idea on our offensive line, which we'll go into in a little bit, I think David Montgomery is going to have another strong year. He's having a great offseason right now. He's rocking hockey jerseys while he's working out in 90-degree weather. Sweating, losing body fat. He is on a grind right now. So David Montgomery is running back number one, followed by Tyreek Cohen, who a lot of people don't understand is that he injured himself. He had an ACL injury close to the middle point of the season. So He might not even be ready for opening day. He's healthy. He's, he's getting back there. Also, our deepest condolences to the Cohen family after the death of Tyreek's twin brother this past weekend. We hope Tyreek, he's in our thoughts and prayers. And if you haven't heard, please reach out to him on Twitter, showing your condolences, as this is a tough time for him and his family. But he is the second string running back right now. And we're hoping that he's back for opening day, because a lot of, lately, besides Derrick Rose, guys who tear their ACL come back bigger and stronger. And then you have this super interesting point of, do we have 3 running backs? Do we have 4 running backs? Do we have 10 running backs? Like, the Bears running back room is very steep right now. And according to CBS Sports, is that they have Damian Williams, this recent signing from the Kansas City Chiefs and Super Bowl hero, as our third string running back, by Khalil Herbert, the rookie out of Virginia Tech, and then Ryan Null and Trevatham Pierce. So a lot of running backs. I agree with this order. I think it makes sense. I wouldn't want Herbert being out there as a third stringer right away. I think Damian Williams is more proven, and he's big in the clutch and has worked with Matt Nagy before. So London, kind of your thoughts on our current running back room?
I mean, David Montgomery, it just hands down is going to be the number one. I mean, we all know it. He exploded in the second half of the season. Once, like we talked about with that offensive line that you just hit on, once we kind of reconfigured it, put Cody Whitehair at the left guard, moved James Daniels to the right guard, put Sam Mustipher at center. Once that kind of happened towards the halfway through the season, it just, I don't know if it was David Montgomery, if it was the offensive line, something happened. He took off, just started absolutely running through and around. Honestly, he was probably the only bright light on our offense, which kind of reminded me of back in the day, under the John Fox regime when we had Jordan Howard and he was the only bright light. But I think we have better players around us in our offense now. So David Montgomery, clear cut, couldn't agree more. I expect him to have a bigger year, honestly. Secondly, coming off that, Tariq Cohen in that second role, kind of as that stat back, playing slot, doing all the different kinds of stuff like that. What people don't remember, because he got injured, how dynamic he really was. People, the way Matt Nagy used him, Cohen, in that 2018 season was masterful. I honestly think he made our offense click and made it more dynamic. I'm really hoping that after this injury, the loss of his twin brother and stuff, he can, rebound, get his head right, play a bunch of Call of Duty and just get all of his emotions out on Twitch, come into the locker room and dominate again like he did. Because honestly, he was dynamic. He really was. He was super dynamic. The rest of them kind of, I expect probably Pierce might get cut. Ryan Null sometimes plays that fullback position because we really don't have that on our offense. I kind of expect him to get cut also. Damian Williams will be great depth and also a player that might see, limited touches during certain games. And then Herbert, like we said, and I know I'll talk about it later when we go to special teams. I expect him to be Cordell Patterson's replacement on punt return and kick return. So I think more of his time, at that kind of fourth, string position at running back, unless injuries happen, I expect him to be way more of a special teams player in that aspect. But overall, David Montgomery, clear-cut workhorse. Love seeing him in the Blackhawks jerseys. Just his footwork, the whole 9 yards. It's great to see.
Yeah. So I think it's pretty clear cut about the quarterback and the running back room. But now we get into a little bit of a shady area for the Chicago Bears offense, is the wide receiver and tight end area. But let's start with the wide receivers. Allen Robinson, clear cut starter. I think we both agree to that. He number one. Number two, Darnell Mooney, makes complete sense, totally proven, absolutely no doubt about it. This is where things get a little weird. Anthony Miller as number 3, a guy that has been tried to be traded, has been a hot trade topic all offseason, is ahead of Jameer Byrd. I hope I said that right, London. Please correct me when you're up in a sec. The guy from the Patriots that we had just signed, total speedster. Marquise Goodwin is also behind. One of the fastest guys in the NFL, an explosive weapon. And then Javon Wims, Riley Ridley, Daz Newsome, and then a bunch of undrafted free agents that the Bears picked up that I don't think are going to make it. Just to say their names, Jester Way, Thomas Ives, Rodney Adams, and Reggie Davis. I don't think the last four names that I just said will make this roster. I don't think Riley Ridley will make this roster. I don't think Javon Wims will make this roster. I think that the Bears are going to have 5 wide receivers, and that's pretty excessive still, normal, but in my opinion, excessive considering how many running backs we have and how we use Tyreek Cohen. But also, why do we want a guy like Anthony Miller, and why do we want a guy like Wims on the roster, especially for what he did in the playoff game last year and his attitude starting fights last year? He's the reason why the Bears went on a big skid for a while, lost a lot of team mojo. So in my takes, and London, I know you probably feel a little bit same. I have Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, Bird, Goodwin, and Newsome staying on this roster. That's just it. I mean, and that's the only we all know I like tall wide receivers. Allen Robinson's the only one above 6 foot, I believe. So, a little bit interesting. But London, let's hear your takes on the wide receiver corps.
Yeah, Nick, I agree with you. I was actually going to drop a bomb here and say that, a couple of these guys will get cut, but you actually just kind of took that mojo from me. So I'll just reinstate what you just said. Allen Robinson, clear cut number 1. Darnell Mooney technically is 6 foot exactly. So maybe, and I think he plays a little taller, but yeah, he's still littler. He's still a lot littler than Allen Robinson. He's the clear cut 2. I think he's going to just have a booming year, hopefully. After that, I kind of agree with you. Bird, Goodwin, I think both will make the roster because of their speed. I would expect Goodwin because he's a veteran player and will probably adapt to the offense a little quicker. And just from what I saw with Bird on the Patriots, I think he'll probably be the clear-cut 3rd with Daz Newsome probably kind of learning from him. Clear-cut 4th will probably be Bird. Again, with Daz Newsome somewhere there around the 4th or the 5th, again, just kind of learning. I think they'll use him a lot on special teams, let him learn from Goodwin and Bird and kind of just rotate in there. But I agree with you with the rest of them. Anthony Miller, honestly, I think we're going to cut him. I think he'll be a cut, and I think he'll make a little news, and some other team will pick him up. And I think that's a big reason why we haven't been able to trade him, because I think other teams know he's going to get cut by the time trading camp's over. Wims, cut him. Don't want him on the team. Honestly, he's just a worthless piece of space by now. Riley Ridley, we tried to get Calvin Ridley out of Riley Ridley. They're not the same player. Everybody kind of saw that out of college. We gave it a shot, didn't work out. And then, like I said, I know you have a couple other ones. Jester Weha, Thomas, Ives, I think. And then Adams and Davis. Again, out of those 4, probably 2 of them will get cut and then be brought back for the practice squad. 2 or 3 of them might be brought back for the practice squad. They won't be on the active roster unless injuries happen. I personally know Jester, so I'm just kind of like crossing my fingers, hoping that he's one of the guys that make it on the practice squad. And maybe can see time. He's a bigger receiver. He's fast. But yeah, I agree with you. Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, Goodwin, Bird, Newsome, probably at the 5th slot, and then just cut the rest of them. And the bottom 4 make practice squad players.
Great. I mean, I think that's honestly still not a bad wide receiver corps for a guy like Andy Dalton or Justin Fields. I still think that's strong. You have veterans, you have speed, you have guys who can go up and get those 50-50 balls. And, Justin Fields is one of the most accurate quarterbacks ever coming out of college. And, you watch game clip, and this is where I'm going to go against Andy Dalton. We all know that I don't mind Andy Dalton starting the season, but he cannot hit a deep ball like Justin Fields can. Justin Fields can throw it on a neat, absolute just thread the needle on it. So, you have guys on this roster that are super talented, have great hands, speed, you name it. But that's kind of who we're going with at the end of the day here. Now, tight end, this is where it gets interesting that CBS kind of did. And I think this could be a slight kind of defense mechanism for CBS, but also for the Bears. Cole Kmet is tight end number 1. And then Jimmy Graham is number 2. Jimmy Graham, obviously multiple-time Pro Bowler, could be a potential Hall of Fame tight end in years to come, is at number 2. A lot of discussion has come up that Jimmy Graham may get cut due to his contract. He's not willing to take less money or turn it into a signing bonus, which doesn't make sense to me, in my opinion, because if he were to do it, he gets the money pretty much instantly. But Jimmy Graham is number 2 behind a guy that did not catch nearly as many red zone touchdowns last year, did not get nearly as many yards as Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham was the better tight end for the Chicago Bears this past year. So I think that Jimmy Graham actually will get cut in the next couple of weeks, unfortunately, and I'm a big Jimmy Graham fan, but I think he's going to get cut in the next couple of weeks because of the cap. And, they're going to try to get Allen Robinson, hopefully an extended contract. But I mean, the Bears are able to pay all their players now with letting go of Leno Jr., but I think Jimmy Graham is, next on the chopping block. And then you have JP Helt, Jesper Horsett, and Darian Clark. So, I think that out of the 5 that I just named, Cole Kmet obviously will be on the roster. JB Holt will be on the roster, and Horsett will be on the roster. But I don't think Jimmy Graham's coming back. And I know that there hasn't been too many rumors about it. It hasn't been talked about a lot. But stay tuned for the next couple of weeks about what the Bears may do with Jimmy Graham. This could be a little Easter egg. And I know, London, I know you like Kmet, but let's hear your thoughts on the tight end room.
Yeah, tight end room. I mean, again, I'm just happy to see us not having like 12 tight ends going into a season. I thought that was a little ridiculous the past couple of years. And I know a lot of my Vikings and Packer buddies were like, why do you guys need 12 tight ends? And I said, honestly, I don't even know 90% of them, and none of them touch the field. So it didn't really make a lot of sense to me. It's great to see only 5 tight ends on the roster currently. Cole Kmet, clear cut number 1. Okay. I think you have to give it to him. I think he's going to have a great offseason. He's been working with Jimmy Graham this offseason. I know they were seen like in helicopters in Miami and stuff like that. So I know they're working together this offseason. So clear cut number 1 is Cole Kmet for me. Number 2, and I'm going to go against you here, and we're going to see who turns out to be the right one. I think Jimmy Graham, after Leno got cut, after Kyle Fuller got cut, after whatever other players that we cut and got rid of, I think that he made it past the cutting phase, and I don't think we're going to get rid of him. I think we're going to keep him. I think some kind of restructuring is going to happen in the next few weeks. Hopefully before like June 1st or after. And I think it's going to be a Cole Kmet number 1, Jimmy Graham number 2, kind of those 2 tight end sets that Matt Nagy loves to run. So I'll go against you, Nick. I'll say Jimmy Graham made it past all the cuts. He made it past the chopping block. He's going to be here for 1 more year, and then his contract's up. We probably won't re-sign him after that. But I think they will pay him just based off of wanting Cole Kmet to turn into him. And I think he shows a lot of potential with how strong he runs after the catch and just the big body and all that kind of stuff like that. So I think it's worth keeping him on the roster, paying him, restructuring, giving him guaranteed money, just so that Cole Kmet can turn into the tight end that we all know he will be. The other 3, honestly, probably Holtz and Holsted will probably stay on the roster, but they won't see a ton of playing time. There'll be more special teams players.
And don't get me wrong, I would love if Jimmy Graham stayed. It's just the cap. You have to consider the next couple of years, who we have to re-sign. A lot of things go into factor, and Jimmy Graham was a hot topic for a while about being on the chopping block. So, we'll see who's right at the end of the day. And I'm not saying it's going to happen tonight. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow. But just stay tuned. That there might be some players that shock you that get cut and stay. And my shocking one would be Jimmy Graham leaving, especially after the kind of year he had last year. It was a very big bounce back compared to the stats he had in Green Bay. Now, this one seems pretty easy. This is clear cut. The next section for us, the offensive line. And the way CBS has it right now is from left tackle, we have Tavon Jenkins. That was, night and day right there when we drafted him, and getting rid of Leno Jr. Whitehair at left guard makes complete sense, was the best left guard in the league behind Quentin Nelson last year in the second half. Again, Bears had a weaker schedule, but still very impressive stat, especially when you have guys that are, 6'4", 330 pounds trying to run through you. I mean, Whitehair is a smaller guard. It does weigh over 300 pounds. Not saying he is a small guy by any means, but these defensive linemen are much larger than him, and he's able to hold his own. Sam Mustipher, an undrafted free agent out of Notre Dame, which London and I love Notre Dame linemen, has absolutely come onto the scene. And I think that the Bears have to consider getting ready to pay this guy. He's going into the last year of his contract. So, that's someone that we should definitely pay depending on play. If he comes out strong again, I think we absolutely pay him. James Daniel at right guard makes absolute sense, like you were saying earlier, London, minus getting hurt earlier in the season. The Bears' offensive line with Whitehair and Daniels in the middle just always looks stronger. And then Jermaine, I always mess up his last name, Infidetti.
There you go.
I think he had a good year last year. So that Bears offensive line looks really, really good. And then you have, Larry Borum, who's another tackle that we drafted out of Mizzou. And then you have a few Alex Bars. You have Elijah Wilkinson, Arlington Hambright. A lot of people forgot about him. The Bears have also a lot of now starting to get experience with this offensive depth, and that's good for the Chicago Bears. So I like that front five, but London, I know you're a big fan of the front five.
Yeah, no, the front five, how they have it down here, is exactly what I had on my depth chart. I mean, it's Jenkins, Whitehair, Mustipher, Daniels, Infidetti. I mean, boom, 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 boom. I think Larry is going to play backup at right tackle to Infidetti, learn a little bit about the position, and I do expect him to overtake that. Out of the backups, I mean, Alex Barr is a very, very solid backup, and again, a Notre Dame lineman. So somebody that, again, if injuries happen or something like that, I have full confidence in coming and play. Same with Elijah Wilkinson. We got him from the Broncos. He's like 24, 23 years old, big guy. Actually started with the Broncos because the Broncos offensive line used to be horrible. And we got him for absolutely nothing. So again, really great. I think we have good depth. I think we have a great inspiring young talent. I think that we, with Jenkins, Larry, and Mustipher, and I think we also have anchors in Whitehair and Daniels. I mean, overall, I have high hopes for this offensive line. I really, really think we finally got it put together. And just like we saw in the second half of the season, we had a top 10 offensive line, and I expect that to carry into this next coming up year, barring any injuries.
So before we move on to defense, London and I are going to give our overall grades to this depth chart on the offense. And just straight answer, I'm going with a B. I think that the Bears are above average now to a degree, and their offensive line is much improved. It is above average. There's no doubt about that. Wide receiver corp, I think, is slightly above average. David Montgomery is a much above average running back. Justin Fields could potentially be an elite quarterback. I know we got a little roasted about jumping the gun, saying that this guy is, going to be the next, big thing in the NFL, hasn't even played a snap. But just having him in your quarterback room, you are at an advantage. You have a young guy who's, one of the best college quarterbacks that came out of the draft and almost beat the guy that's supposedly better than him. But when you break out the stats between Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields looks like a better quarterback at the end of the day and in gameplay. I mean, Tony said it himself. These guys went toe to toe multiple times. So, and the tight end room, Jimmy Graham, Cole Kmet, that's a good tight end room. I think that the Bears are definitely on the right track, like you said, and it's a very young offense too. So I'm giving him a B. London, what are you going with?
I'm going with a B also. I think that overall our offensive line is the highlight of our offense. I think we finally got that correct. And honestly, our offensive line, like I said, can be a top 10 offensive line barring injuries. I agree with you. Tight end Cole Kmet, if we keep Jimmy Graham, solid, fine, honestly, great in the red zone, like phenomenal in the red zone. Jimmy Graham's a beast in the red zone. Our wide receiving core, I think after the signings of Bird and Goodwin, I honestly do think we're on the uptick. I think it's still kind of the weakest area, but it's always the weakest area for the Chicago Bears, but a lot better than we have been since recent years, in honestly for a while. David Montgomery is a monster, and our quarterback room has inspiring hope with Justin Fields. It's all going to depend on if he is the person with the knowledge and the abilities and going up against Trevor Lawrence and always constantly beating him, whether that was 7-on-7, whether that was in championship games, whether that was he just always got the best of Trevor Lawrence, whether that's the team aspect or just the one-on-one, Justin Fields was better. If he turns out to be the quarterback that everybody's hyping him to be, then of course this offense is an A+, and we don't even care about this. But currently right now on paper, a B, but that is so much better than it was the past 2 years.
No doubt about that. And that's what kind of leads us into obviously the other side of the ball, which has been the Bears' strong suit for the last 5-6 years. Even through the bad years, the Bears defense has always shown up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through the starters very fast because they all sound very familiar. But then we get into the secondary, the depth guys, a lot different, but in a lot of ways, very improved or good re-signings. So just to start off, the way CBS has it broken down is a little different than how the Bears and other analysts will speak to the defense, but let's go through the 11 starters. You have at defensive end, Akeem Hicks. Perfect. Love that he stayed. Love that Ryan Pace kept him. We needed the mojo after Cordell Patterson left. This guy is the mojo of the Chicago Bears as a veteran. Nose tackle, Eddie Goldman. A lot of people forgot that the Bears didn't have him last year. And if the Bears would have had him last year, I think that could have been something very special. But here's what's even more special about it is that they didn't get rid of anyone that's like, oh my goodness, our front sevens hurt so bad. Because then at right defensive end, you have Blau Nichols, who had an even better breakout year than the year before, and he was a 6th-round pick. So, Ryan Pace working his magic, getting that kind of guy. Left inside linebacker Roquan Smith, absolutely. If you don't start this guy, or if the Bears got rid of him, I would have been very, very upset along with London because he is the future of the defense. Right inside linebacker, Danny Trevatham, the oldest, probably most liable part of liable part of that defense because he did not warm up till last year. And London and I have hit on that multiple times. Robert Quinn at strong side linebacker, lot of off field issues last year. He will be the starter considering how much we're paying him. Hoping for a bounce back year from him. That's usually what happens in Chicago sports is guys who had big years before come in, the atmosphere, guys get used to the new stadium, everything else. Usually takes them a year to warm up. Happens with the Cubs, the Bulls, the Hawks all the time. So I'm giving Quinn a little bit benefit of the doubt with everything that was going on with him. Weak side, which doesn't make sense, but weak side linebacker, Khalil Mack, that's not doing anywhere. The only difference that you will see from last year's starting defense compared to now is right corner, Desmond Trufant, cornerback from the Detroit Lions because we got rid of Kyle Fuller due to cap issues. A lot of people disagree with that move. It makes sense in some areas, and others made absolutely no sense when we ended up getting rid of Charles Leno Jr. anyway. Left cornerback Jalen Johnson coming off a huge rookie season. And then strong safety, the returning Deshaun Gibson. I'm very happy about that. Got him for another $1.1 million deal. And then free safety Eddie Jackson. So London starters, just to start, there's not much to say about it. It's pretty much the same as last year, besides Eddie Goldman coming back.
Yeah, no, it's great. Eddie Goldman coming back is a huge, huge benefit. And I'm saying this right now. I think Blau Nichols will continue to have an even better year. I think that he only was starting to hit his stride. I expect him to be even more dominant now that he's in the starting rotation. Roquan Smith, he's a god. Khalil Mack, he's a god. I agree with you about Robert Quinn. Desmond Trufant, I think he's kind of a placeholder, kind of like Prince Amukamara was. But again, Prince Amukamara, when he was here at that placeholder year, I think led the NFL in interceptions for most of the season. So I don't expect Desmond Trufant to just be some, waste of an area. Jalen Johnson is going to be the clear-cut number one corner guarding the number one, possibly the number one receiver on teams. We'll see if he shadows them or not. We don't know yet. Coming off injury, we will see that. But like I said, Desmond Trufant, totally fine. Love Gibson coming back. Eddie Jackson's a dog. Overall, like I said, bringing back Eddie Goldman, I think will keep our defense at the pinnacle, like top 3, top 5, which we've been ranked for the last 4 years.
Right, absolutely. And a lot of people also got to remember that the defensive coordinator that is taking over the Chicago Bears is literally Vic Fangio Jr. And defensive players, when Khalil Mack is saying something to the public about it, and Eddie Jackson, and especially Hicks as well, that says something about these guys are going to look like themselves, hopefully from 2018. Awkward little gap there with Chuck Pagano, who great person, just wasn't the right guy for this Bears type of defense. But let's go into the secondary. A lot of changes for the Chicago Bears this offseason. Starting at left behind Akeem Hicks is Angelo Blackson from the Arizona Cardinals. Great pickup for what we paid for him. Strong player, really good at getting after the running back. Not a big, sack machine. I mean, he can, there's no doubt about it. But when a running back is going up the line, he always finds a way to stop him before he, breaks it open. Nose tackle, Iris Tonga, the captain defensive tackle out of BYU, is already considered second on the depth chart. So that's also something that's very exciting. It shows that Pace had something in mind with this guy, and he was actually considered one of the late round steals of the draft, considering how much of a beast he is. And then you have Mario Edwards at right defensive end. Bears re-signed him to a 3-year contract. Had a little bit of off-field issues. There's no doubt about that. You know, it all did get worked out, and he's able to be back in the NFL on the roster. But he had a great year last year, especially as a depth guy. Really like that re-signing. The Bears are bringing back Josh Woods. Picked him up later last year. All right, we got him for cheap. That's totally fine. Right inside linebacker, Joel, very long last name. Everyone knows who I'm talking about, though. Number 45 on the Chicago Bears. You don't really hear about him, but he's a really good special teams player. So you can't deny that it's good keeping him. He doesn't really play that many defensive snaps unless it's, garbage time. But bringing back Kristen Jones, played for the Bears back when they weren't the greatest, back in about 2015 to 2017. Went to Detroit, came back to the Chicago Bears on a cheap contract. Jeremiah, behind Khalil Mack is Jeremiah Attachu. I don't remember the Bears picking up Attachu. London, please feel free to jump into him later. But then behind right cornerback, Duke Shelley. I really like this. He's been on the Bears for a couple years, a special teams guy, hopefully getting some time to shine. Artie Burns, a lot of people forgot about him. He did not make the roster, or he tore his ACL last year, was out for the whole season. The Bears decided to re-sign him, which that's super exciting. And then strong safety, another guy, Jordan Lucas, who opted out for COVID protocols, is coming back next year. Played for the Kansas City Chiefs. Very excited about that. And then Deion Bush behind Eddie Jackson. So London, what do you think about the secondary? Please fix any names that I messed up. But what are you thinking about the depth chart for the secondary? Second tier guys for the defense.
Yeah. So just based on the second and third tier guys, you don't have to list all the third tier guys either. But the biggest ones that I just want to highlight, Blackson is considered, and some people I'm hearing it around the whisper chains, that he's going to be considered like the next Akeem Hicks pickup, that when we stole him from the Patriots. So that's really exciting. Young, defensive lineman, showed like a lot of sparks and stuff. They just didn't have the money because they signed JJ Watt and some other people there. Tonga, awesome. Loved him. We talked about him a lot during our draft recap. If you haven't seen our draft recap, go watch it. We talked all about him. Great player. Agreed. Mario Edwards had a good year. A lot of people after like week 4, when he was playing really well, said that we should re-sign him. We did. That's great. Josh Woods, honestly, kind of irrelevant. Josh Woods and Joel are both kind of, I can't even pronounce his last name. They're both kind of.
I say you're trying to avoid his last name too.
Yeah, I'm going to avoid it. I'll try. I think it's Lingubunui, Lingbunui. I think it's something like that. So I think Woods and Joel, I think both of them, are special teams guys. Jeremy Chachu, we got him from the Broncos also. He's a good role player. Again, I think he's kind of going to be like Mingo was, kind of coming in those things. I'd be very interested to see if Little Mac actually touches the field, since he's considered on like the 3rd on the depth chart. That'd be kind of interesting. Duke Shelley, fine. I think he's a little undersized. I actually expect either Trey Robertson or the guy we just drafted, Thomas Graham Jr., to overtake his spot at the 3rd or 4th corner position. Artie Burns got injured, came from the Steelers. He was a Cane. Loved him. Again, he kind of has Buster Screen written all over him, though. So that makes me really nervous. Again, hoping that Thomas Graham is the player that everybody thinks he is. So it could be him and Duke. And I don't have to worry about Artie Burns, pulling a buster on us. Again, Jordan Lucas, I think he was a great player from the Chiefs. Great role player. Again, we'll see kind of where he fits and kind of what happens with him, just based on opting out. We re-signed Deion Bush. I think he's a great special teams player. Also can come in there a little bit and play. So overall, we do have depth on the defense, which is something that, teams defensively really worry about sometimes, especially if you do see injuries. And I think we were able to reload. I think we were able to bring some guys in rookies, and also some just younger guys that teams couldn't sign because they were signing guys like J.J. Watt and other things.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I give this defense an A-, and that's just being biased. But again, you can't deny that this Bears defense is still a very good team. So, I give them an A-. London, where you sitting at with them?
I mean, I'm giving them an A until somebody can prove me wrong that they're not a top 5 defense. Until some offense can prove me wrong that they're not a top 5. They're not a top 5 defense in the NFL. And unless something crazy happens, like Jalen Johnson goes down again, or something like that happens, I don't expect them not to be. So again, until proven wrong, they're one of the best defenses in the NFL. And I don't really expect, with Eddie Goldman coming back, I think that's only better.
Absolutely. Cherry on top was Eddie Goldman, a very big cherry. But finally, to wrap things up, going into special teams very fast, obviously punter Pat O'Donnell is holding his spot, the longest trench bear on this roster. Kicker Cairo Santos coming off a giant year. Definitely very proud of him for all that he did. And thank you for bringing back kicking to Chicago. Long snapper Patrick Scales is not going to lose his position, because once you're a long snapper, you don't lose that spot. Field goal holder, Pat O'Donnell, absolutely makes sense. Never seen him mess up, knock on wood. But punt returner, they have Anthony Miller. I think London and I kind of hit on it earlier that this is probably most likely going to go to Khalil Herbert or Daz Newman. And then kick returner, same scenario. I think it's going to go to one of those guys, or Goodwin. That's also why we brought him in. So London, I'm giving this special teams an A, just because Santos is back on it, and just because of scale, swag, and O'Donnell just being able to out bench press half of the linemen that go into the NFL draft. So London, where do you kind of sit with this roster? Who do you think is going to be punt returner in your grade?
Yeah, Pat O'Donnell, solid punter in the NFL, has been since he came out of Miami. Loved him then, loved him now. Santos, thank you to every single thanks that I can possibly give from every religion in this entire world, that we finally got a kicker that can consistently kick the ball through the goalpost. I'm very excited about Santos. Was happy we re-signed him. Of course, Scales, he's been here for a while. Love him at long snapper. And I agree with you. At punt and kick returner, these positions, because they're not going to have Darnell Mooney back there, they don't want to risk him being injured. And I don't think Anthony Miller is going to be on the roster. Those two positions, especially for those rookies like Newsome, like Bird, Bird's not a rookie, but Bird coming in his first year as a Chicago Bear, like Herbert, those positions are going to be open and ripe for the taking, and are going to get you a roster spot on this Chicago Bears team if you can excel. I expect it to be Herbert, punt returner and kick returner for both of them. And then probably, I don't know, whoever the 5th receiver is will maybe go back there also at kick return. But I expect Herbert to win this job. So overall, I agree. Our special teams, back when we had Devin Hester, was an A. Then we lost it for a while, had terrible kickers. Robbie Gould left. Everything just went downhill and just straight down the toilet. Now Santos has just rebreathed life into this special teams. So again, until proven wrong, and him going on a crazy kicking miss spree, which I don't expect, an A.
Well, with that, I'm giving the Bears offensive B, defense an A-, and an A for the special teams. And London is going with a B for the offense, an A for the defense, an A for the special teams. Yes, we are biased Chicago Bears fans, but that's just how it goes when you log on to our show. So with that, thank you very much for taking your time to dive into the depth chart of the current Chicago Bears roster. My name is Nick Rohde, joined alongside London Beth, and we will see you guys on Friday.